All right. I think we're good to go. Remember to use your microphones, please. All right.
Okay. I'd like to call the June 15th, 2023 Airport Commission meeting to order. Will the airport manager please call the roll?
Olson,
Present.
Bias,
Here.
Eoff,
Here.
Outfest, and Stinga, not here. We have a quorum.
Okay, approval of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Are there any objections to approving the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Approval of minutes for the March 16th, 2023 regular meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes? Are there any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. There are no scheduled public comments and presentations. Also, no action items. Reports from the airport manager.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Bias. This will be a fairly quick report. I do have about 5 items here. The first one is kind of a budget update. Quick update on the FY23 operating budget. We're coming to a close on that on June 30th. Other than some routine budget transfers for the excessive snow removal that occurred out there, we're coming in on target with our FY23 budget. The FY24 budget made its way through council not in the not too distant past after the airport commission's last meeting, but wanted to report that no substantial change to the airport budget other than one or two things. One, for the second year, we're going to continue with the 6-month part-time seasonal employee that will be dedicated to assist with the snow removal. So that's a wintertime position that will improve our snow response out there. And then a new item that is affecting all non-general fund departments, which is an administrative service charge. So the utility fund, the airport fund, departments that utilize some generic citywide functions such as IT, human resources, finance, expenditures that the general fund bears, but other departments don't contribute towards. And a calculation was developed based on the number of full-time equivalent employees and its ratio to the citywide FTE count. And what that number comes up to for the airport fund is $38,800 for FY24. So that's a new expenditure line item in our budget that will, clearly be a deduction in funds from our fund balance. The good news is revenues are expected to increase in FY24. They're projected to be about $240,000 in FY24, which is an increase of about $12,000, about 5.33%. As a reminder, the land lease revenues are our primary revenue source, about 67% of the fund overall projected revenue. And that includes rent from the general fund occupied land, that's airport land. Wellhouse B is one, the city shop, that's airport land. So they contribute the land lease to the airport fund. Just for context and to make us all feel a little bit better about that administrative service charge, the fee to the utility fund is $217,000 annually. So it could be worse. From an airport perspective, there is a true number. There is a real cost to the general fund that they bear for services rendered to the airport fund. This FTE analysis was kind of the best that we could come up with at the time, but I do intend to kind of monitor it a bit better and continue to data gather so that we can hopefully refine that to what I believe and hope to be. It might be a little bit less, but from a best guess standpoint, that's what we came up with. So Real quick, the other, real quick spin through the FY '24 budget. Again, it's really no change to what we've had in the past. We continue to allocate funding for advertising promotion through the airfare. I was out of town unfortunately last weekend, but I understand it was a big success. The pancake breakfast and the EAA supported event at our airport. Pretty minor from a static display perspective. I think Coast Guard was there, but it sounded like it was well attended and quite the success. And then just the usual stuff. We've got contracted services for grass mowing, some small tools and minor equipment, lighting supplies, the usual. So any questions or comments on the budget? The next item, the lease lot and tie down update. I actually didn't get those figures in time for this meeting, so I will have to follow up via email, but no significant changes. We've had some interest per normal. No new significant leases that have been executed. Tie down, a pretty typical seasonal fluctuation on tie downs when folks get on the lakes, get off the lakes, stuff like that. But no real changes. The one thing I'll note though is I did provide a tour of our airport with the Division of Forestry. For many years, they've always kind of kicked around the idea of being at our airport and changing kind of their locations. They're right up the hill out of town, and then they have a tanker base in Kenai, and they kind of have split services. They have a model in Palmer that they really like, that works for the city of Palmer and their airport. I made sure that they understood, there'd be a lot of probably public input and discussion about how that might change our airport, whether or not the airport commission and council would support that. But, from a financial perspective, again, land leases are our primary revenue sources. So, not a bad thing. And, they're also a very seasonal user, not many forest fires in December. So, that's just an ongoing issue. I'll keep the airport commission abreast as anything changes. The next item, the Westgate access control. This is something that was brought before the commission in the fall, and the commission supported providing access to that west gate that's controlled by a key code to a limited number of west end tenants, with the idea that it was not only convenient for those tenants on the west end, but it also would reduce and limit the amount of vehicle traffic in aircraft movement areas coming across the taxiways, et cetera, to get to those west end hangars and tie downs. So we postponed issuing those codes until we could get a security camera up and installed and functioning. We did that I think a month or so ago when weather permitted. So cameras up and running. We are putting the final touches on the key agreement, if you will, access agreement. And so we'll be permitting some minimal issuance of codes as folks come to us and request that. The airport consulting term contract, I've been working on that off and on as time allows. It's something I need to get wrapped up and on the street. And that's simply a qualifications-based RFP to have a design and consulting services on a term contract so that the solicitation is federally compliant, so that when grant opportunities come up, we can use them exclusively based on negotiated fees and rates. The other element that I'll be including in that is assistance with the DBE program, which is we're up for our 3-year setting of goals for the DBE program, and behind on some of the annual reporting. And it's something that a consultant would certainly be helpful with. The Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. So the federally administered program for entities that accept and receive federal dollars for their projects. And I hope I'm not speeding through this too fast, but it's quasi beautiful out there as it goes for our spring days. Grant update. and projects. The existing runway rehab reconstruction project is at the very tail end. You probably have seen some mobilization out there of precast manholes and pipe. The final work is to install a bit of storm drain on the east end of the runway to get rid of some water that developed over there as we reconstructed the runway. We've just been waiting for the weather and the ground conditions to permit us to get in and put that in. So that should be done within the next probably 3 weeks, I would think. The quick update on our CIP list. We have systematically taken care of most of our assets out there, which is nearly exclusively asphalt. The edge lighting we took care of with the taxiway and runway projects. So the next kind of 4 projects, as a reminder, the first one is obstruction removal. That's to remove trees that are all on airport property that were identified in years past. In order to get that grant, we needed to do some permitting, and we sent our project to SHPO, and they've requested a cultural study. So we've kind of hit a pause there. There's not a strong urgency. There's nothing penetrating the plane, but there are obstructions and they're just trees that we need to take care of. So, but SHPO is the State Historical Preservation Office. State historical properties that are on a list, or cultural I don't want to say remains, cultural sites, artifacts, etc. Yeah. So we had done one years ago. Mr. Rieger had done one for us for our apron expansions. And I think that SHPO determined that it was old enough, and perhaps this project was, outside, pushing the boundaries of that older report. So they're interested in getting another one. I got a quote to do it, and I think it was about $40,000. And I was expecting much less. So that's a work in progress for that first grant, but we'll need to accomplish that before I can get that obstruction removal grant.
Was there anything found on the first time they
No.
went through and did that?
Is that within the fenced area, or is that outside?
All within the fence. Sorry. Partially in the fenced area, and then the other part is to the west of the west end of the runway, all on airport property. Where obstruction removal gets messy is when you're dealing with private property. You see those trees that are half cut at an angle, and et cetera. Everything's on airport property, which makes it simple. And no clearing or grubbing, which is where I was hoping we wouldn't need to do, we could do it strategically in frozen ground and things of that nature. But so I'm investigating and working on that cultural study. Kind of a cat and, kind of a chicken and egg thing, because it's grant eligible, but I may not be able to get the grant until I have my permitting in place. And the airport fund isn't flush with money, as you guys know. So,
Yeah.
so I need to find the recipe and get that figured out. But that's the number one grant project that I'm working on right now.
If you don't mind, I'm curious about the culture. I mean, what's the anticipation of something that's?
Well, sure. Thank you for that question. They will dig some pits in some selected areas and just see what's there. They'll do a paper study on existing resources and archaeological information for that area. The Kenai River is pretty close. So there could have been some older cultures that used some of those areas that they want to make sure that aren't damaged or destroyed through this federally funded project.
There are out at the college a lot of archaeological sites out there that Alan Boris had identified, and
At the college or at the airports?
no, at the college. So based on the history of the Denina here in the area, and it's also a requirement of projects as you're doing work, that you need to go in and do an archaeological clearance and make sure there aren't any sites, and so.
Yeah, especially being close to the river, it was a
Yeah.
travel way for them.
Yep.
way
It's
back
not.
in the day.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. We had about 250,000 for hazardous fuel reduction, beetle kill trees. And we did it at the end of West Redoubt, which is down by the river. And we actually, Alan's, I can't remember his name now, but he's the archaeologist at KPC, and we contacted him and he came out. We flagged a huge area around the known established pits and we just didn't go near it. And so, we're aware of it and have worked our way through it. And we'll figure this one out too. It just may take, and it may be good to refresh that study for that area,
Mhm.
future projects. So just a hiccup in timing.
Yeah.
The good news is it's not preventing, there's not a dangerous situation that's preventing, GPS approach or anything like that.
Yeah.
The other three projects, the reels, runway end, identifier lights, and then two pieces of equipment, end up with a sand spreader and then a broom attachment for our 950. So, no big giant, apron or taxiway, projects. We've done a good job of kind of systematically taking care of that. Really, the only thing left is, some central apron and tie down areas where we seal coated instead of
That was gonna be my question.
yeah.
The area where those cracks were and a forest is that,
Yeah, the effectiveness of our previous crack sealing and seal coating is, I think it's officially, the pavement condition has become reconstruct. Rather
Oh,
than
no.
pavement preservation, we're beyond that.
in that,
And
that's,
in just that central area,
yeah.
but it's a small area compared to the sea of asphalt that we've already taken care of. So
Yeah.
that, I believe, concludes my report.
All right. Thank you, Airport Manager. Next on the list, we have Commission Chairs Report. We have no report. Report from Maintenance Manager Sundberg. Sundberg's not present. Oh, do you have a report for him? Or relay message?
I do not have a report for him. The maintenance crew continues to just get things done and tackle everything that's thrown their way, which is a lot. I
Yep.
think Mr. Sundberg reported removing well over 300 yards of sand in his sweepers this spring.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is that able to be recycled and reused on site, or is that?
Typically, we don't.
No.
There's a lot of times that it gets ground down. We get so much of those fines in there and then big gold cups and other
Oh, yeah.
artifacts.
They'll be studying those in 200 years.
Yeah.
All right. City Manager reports, report from the City Manager Bauer. I believe City Manager Bauer's here. Public comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment?
When's it's green? That is what the current lease has in it for leased property. Yep, I can tell you it's been 12 or 13 years since we've looked at that lease. The FAA does ask all grant recipients to make sure they're charging a fair market value. We have a new administrative fee that is negatively affecting our fund balance, so it's something that needs to be looked at periodically. And how that impacts existing lessees and their agreements, we haven't delved into that quite yet. A little bit harder than finance. I can't tell you, we're much more nimble with tie down rates, right? That's a lot more discretionary, right? Doesn't take an MAI certified appraisal company and et cetera. So, and that would entail, you know, looking at comps in different airports, much like you said. Yeah. That's correct. Yep.
Security cameras real quick.
Yeah, what?
East side.
Yep, nope, I appreciate it. Yep. Yeah, well, when I was griping to our finance director, she told me, just raise your fees. And I know. Yeah. Yeah, we do. We, you know, yep, 100%.
Thank you. Any other public comments today? Okay, council comments. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things. We did, our city manager started on May 15th. That's Jeanette Bauer that we stole from Seward, and very glad to have her on board. And in between, when Stephanie left and Jeanette came on, Kyle was the acting city manager, and I can tell you, Kyle does a tremendous job and definitely has a plate load between all the projects that he's working on. So we're very thankful to have him. The council, the end of May, adopted a 2-year budget. So this is the second time that we've adopted a 2-year budget. So we do 2-year budgets, and next May, we will look at FY24 to see if we need to make any adjustments for the fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year. And then one of the folks who had been with the city for 30 years, Andrew Carmichael, who was the Parks and Rec director, retired mid-May. And Joel Todd, who has been working with Andrew the past few years, is now the new Parks and Rec director for the city. And so glad to have him on. And as we all know, there's lots of activity, and Soldotna Creek Park is a happening spot.
Very much.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but that's the end of my report, Mr. Chair.
Sounds good. Any questions? All right. Commissioner comments. Are there any comments from any of the commissioners?
Well, in spite of myself, I think I was going to say something, and that's, Kyle, the job you're doing and how many things you have up in the air at the same time and getting done efficiently is extremely impressive. Glad we have you.
Thank you.
And of course, I also agree with that, Kyle.
Oh, and I do.
Too many
as well.
hats, I think.
Yeah.
You need a break. Okay. That'll be the conclusion then. The next meeting of the airport Commission will be held September 21st, 2023 at 5:30 PM in the City Council Chambers, 177 North Birch Street, Soldotna, Alaska, 99669.
Thanks, Kurt.
Good job, Kyle.
All right. Drive safe.
See you soon.